Usually, the more experience you have, the less attached you are to specific ideas. But that's also the way that you want to be if you really want for your team to become a fertile field of ideas.
Hi, welcome back to Game Brain. My name's Don. Francesco Antolini was principal designer on 2015's Just Cause 3. He then served as game director on Just Cause 4. Recently, I spoke with Francesco about how the team evolved the grappling hook in Just Cause 3 and 4 with the use of the Tether retract, and later with the grappling mods. And so what was your philosophy when working on Just Cause 3 regarding the grappling hook? How did you approach that mechanic when you began work on the title?
One of the reasons why I joined the studio in New York, I was basically among the founder, one of the first employees there. I was working in Quebec at the time, and then I discovered that Avalanche was opening a studio in New York, and I was just playing Just Cause 2, right? And I loved that game. I loved the immediacy. I did love the grappling hook itself. I love it so much that I delved further into it, playing also Just Cause 1, right? And I noticed this evolution. In Just Cause 1, the grappling hook was just an attachment, kind of a tool that you needed to equip, meaning that either you had a gun or you had the grappling hook. What came out already from Just Cause 1 was that the grappling hook was actually very fun to use as a traversal tool. And that's the big evolution that it had from Just Cause 1 from Just Cause 2, right? In Just Cause 2, the grappling hook, it's an integral part of Rico. That's there, it's on his arm, always. I like to say that Rico is a cyborg, if you want. So something that I knew already starting Just Cause 3 was that I wanted to maintain that. I wanted to maintain the grappling hook as a fundamental part of Rico, as a fundamental tool of traversal. At the same time, though, I wanted to try to bring it to a next step. So what can we do? What can we experiment with? Well, let's see what happens if we give players the ability of using the grappling hook to mess around with the physics within the world, right? Because if you look at Just Cause, but frankly at any other Avalanche games, the physics sandbox, it's a strong element that defines our games, and the way that we do physics, it's quite unique out there. We did do that through the introduction of a little feature, the retract. You probably know about it, right? So in Just Cause 3, you can tether two objects, two dynamic objects, two characters, a character and an object, two vehicles, whatever, exactly as in Just Cause 2. But you now have a button that you can press to retract the two things that you've tethered together. Again, for us was a little experiment, not something that we advertised a lot, but it ended up being one of the features that the players loved the most in Just Cause 3. Already early in development, we kind of had a confirmation that we were on the right track with that one.
One of the other new additions of Just Cause 3 was obviously the wingsuit, but obviously the grappling hook is a huge part of the success of the wingsuit as well, the way that those two mechanics work together. Was it obvious when you were developing the wingsuit that the way that the slingshot mechanic worked with the parachute would translate to the wingsuit? Did that seem like a easy relationship?
No, absolutely not. Indeed, as for the birth of the grappling hook itself, this type of interaction are born out of ceaseless prototyping, trial and error, and trying features out, see what's fun, see what's not fun.
So you spoke about the retract feature before as well, and was it obvious? How did that feature come about? Was it like you said, a series of prototypes that led you to the final product?
Very simple, right? Because also when it comes to prototyping in a game studio, yes, there is the case where you wake up with an idea and then you go to the office and you prototype it. There is the case where you are at lunch with your peers and you come up with an idea and then you go to the office and you prototype it. But most of the time, it's just that you are dabbling into the code, you are there playing with the game itself, and all of a sudden you see an opportunity and you say, oh, let me try to do this. And that's exactly what happened with the retract. when you tether two things together in Just Cause 2, there is actually a retract that happens, okay? If you tether two guys in Just Cause 2, you're gonna see them doing this without you doing anything with your gamepad. So the code to retract two things together was already there. And Joe Shikura, who's the designer, who's actually the spiritual dad of the retract, if you want, came with this thought, I don't make that retract happen automatically, but I move it on an input. And that's how the first prototype was born. He called me at his desk as soon as he had it, and I was immediately mesmerized by the possibility that I was foreseeing this feature having. And so I gave the green light to actually, go headlong with it.
Most open worlds are built as playgrounds, I guess, to highlight the game's mechanics. It sort of starts with the player and what their capabilities are, I assume at least, and then you sort of build out from there. I mean, was Rico an interesting subject to build a world around, given how much freedom his mechanics allow? Was that a difficult task?
So we give player goals, but we never force them to attain those goals in a specific way. Most of the times, doing things the most obvious way is not the most fun ones, right? And it's a little bit, it's the juice of the sandbox. I give you the sandbox, I give you the toys, then you decide how to play with it. All these things I'm telling you about also mean that if you are a player that it doesn't have a vocation for being creative in this playground, but just prefer to shoot the rocket at its target of destruction, that's okay, and that's perfectly plausible in a Just Cause. So it's a game that can be approached in a variety of different ways, and that makes our life a little bit easier, because all of a sudden I don't need to make sure that you have perfectly understood what are the 4 million different possibilities and combinations that you can pull off with your grappling hook.
So you finished Just Cause 3, and do you immediately begin working on Just Cause 4? And also, you were obviously promoted to the role of game director. How did that promotion come about?
The promotion came about simply as Roland, who was the game director on Just Cause 3, departed to new adventures. And I was offered the position by Christopher Sandberg. I still remember the day. I'll probably never forget about it. He just called the office and asked, "Okay, do you want to direct the game?" It's like, wow, it's a dream since I was 4 years old. What naturally happened after Just Cause 3 was released was that we had a period where we were working on the DLCs for Just Cause 3. That was great because the moment when we actually started the work on Just Cause 4, we could already rely on a decent corpus of commentaries and reviews from players and journalists who had played Just Cause 3 that helped us gauge what did they like and what they did not like about the game, so that we could have improved on the improvable and given more of what was liked in Just Cause 4.
And so those reviews and those criticisms really played heavily into the way that you regrouped and then executed on Just Cause 4?
Extremely.
Were there any things in particular that stood out in terms of what needed to happen in the next title?
But of course, it goes without saying that people didn't like that the game was not technically sound. It has a very, very rocky rollout, Just Cause 3. So that was the first thing that forced us as a company to review our tech to the point that we can say that Just Cause 4 is actually based on a new engine versus the engine we used for Just Cause 3. Then the other thing that stood out immediately was that people were crying for more variety. Just Cause 3 is an extremely beautiful game, talking from an art standpoint, but it's entirely set in a very limited version of the Mediterranean, if you want. You lose the feeling of discovery pretty soon, and that's something that came out in almost every review in the game and in many of the Reddit commentaries. The other point that was super evident, and that this time in a positive way, was that people went crazy with the sandbox and the physics itself. So the retract was super loved. And another thing that was loved was this modification on the planted explosives that let the explosive propel itself with a jet for a few seconds before actually exploding. And people did use that in all sorts of ways we had not thought about beforehand. And that's one of the reasons why, we took that jet and we put it on the grappling hook with Just Cause 4. What I learned the most across the development of Just Cause 3 was to let go. Usually, the more experience you have, the less attached you are to specific ideas, and the more open you are to things that may at the beginning even sound a bit strange to you, right? But that's also the way that you want to be if you really want for your team to become a fertile field of ideas.
And can you tell me how the team landed on the idea of the grappling mods? Obviously, that's such a huge part of Just Cause 4. Was that an idea that took some time to develop? Was it always 3 mods in particular? How did it change over the course of development?
So the reason why we went that direction, it's exactly because we realized how much people loved the retract and the booster in Just Cause 3, right? We really wanted to push it to a superior level. Hence the hyper customizable grappling hook you can do a lot of things about. You always start hyper ambitious and then you zone in the features that really work, the features where it's really worth to put your polish. So no, the attachment had not always been 3. We started actually with a wealth of different ideas, and then we kept the one that made the most sense and that we thought had the most potential. Of course, why 3 and not 4 and not 5 for sheer production considerations, right? Developing the attachment themselves was not hard. What was very, very hard was to actually figure out a good interface for it. There is actually a big feature that we had to cut that changed substantially the way that you approach this grappling hook. And frankly, I don't know anymore now. I can't know, who can know, whether the current versions or the version that we shipped with it's more fun or not of the previous one. The original idea was that you couldn't have been able to reconfigure your grappling hook on the spot wherever you were, right? So that's what you can do now. Now, wherever you are, you press a button, you change your loadout, and you go back in game and you play. But originally, what we wanted to do, we wanted to have bench tables, like they call that the bench in the front lines. So have specific places in the front line where you had to go reconfigure your grappling hook and then keep the configuration until you had found another front line or another on another bench. So why so? This is a philosophy similar to the way, for example, that you apply mod to the weapon in Doom. Your little drone, and you can add a new mod only when that happens. What this does, it creates a commitment, a very strong commitment in terms of the loadout that you are about to employ. Another thing that it does, it forces a change of pace and puts you in a slow mode every time that you are tinkering with your grappling hook, which is very different from what happens now. So would that have been better or worse? I don't know. I'm happy to see that people are enjoying what we eventually shipped out with anyway.
In Just Cause 4, there are no missions that specifically rely on the grappling hook. It's sort of used whenever you want. Is the grappling hook better off when the player can just create their own structure and not need a mission to tell them how to use it?
Absolutely. It's a plus if you want to use it, but I'm never going to force you to use it in a specific way, right? Because I don't want to frustrate all those players, and I'm pretty sure they are the majority, who actually play Just Cause mostly for the visceral pleasure of these unbelievable explosions and chaos and freedom. It's hard to use the grappling hook, and it's hard to use the grappling hook creatively.
Do you think there's any room for improvement with the grappling hook, or do you feel like with Just Cause 4 you sort of reached the final stage?
If you ask a game director or a lead designer for what it's worth, there's always room for improvement. We never get to perfection. So the answer is yes, for sure there's room for improvement.
Francesco, thank you. That's all the questions I have for today, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for you.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much for watching my interview with Francesco Antolini. Feel free to like and or share this video if you enjoyed it. But while you're here, I really want to know what games you want to hear more about. I'm really passionate about speaking with the developers behind some of our favorite games, and I need your help to decide who I speak with next. So in the comments below, please let me know about games and developers you'd like to see more from. Also, why not subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for future content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.